Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome back, all you citizens of the world. Welcome back to the second half of Live from the Heartland for the week of November 21st in the year 2025. And it's always great when I have the opportunity to interview some of my pals. We can make remarks at each other, make jokes before and after. And I'm here today with Quinn, known around the world for his work with Kartemquin Films, and Peter Kuttner, who also has worked with Kartemquin Films and was a fellow member of Rising Up Angry. So we go way back. In fact, all three of us go way back together. We're going to talk a little bit today about their recent travels. Both of them were in Leipzig, Germany for a film festival, and Gordon was over in Japan for the Yamagata International Documentary Festival. They have, Kartemquin has always had a unique style of filmmaking, has gotten much acclaim for that. So why don't we start off with Gordon? Tell us a little bit about Kartemquin and what took you all the way to Japan, lucky guy.
Well, Kartemquin is, I don't know, what are we coming up on? 60 years now. And we'll talk a little bit when Peter jumps in about the late 60s and 70s when we were a collective. We've always felt that our films have a social purpose. But what was exciting about Japan, where I went with Ian Kibbe, who is now working, a young person who's now working with, I guess he's not so young anymore, but now working with Kartemquin, and a filmmaker and producer. And we were there showing Kartemquin's very first movie as part of a special section in the festival about direct cinema, which was the American version of cinema verite. Drew Associates, Leacock Pennybaker, the Maisels, all these people who were working with, and there were Canadians involved, recording on realities that unfolded. We all take it for granted today. You can do it with your phone. But in those days, there were some breakthroughs that people who were struggling to tell what was going on in the world and watch life unfold before the camera were kind of developing their own equipment. And we actually had kind of done our own camera modification to do this first film, Home for Life, which we shot in a home for the aged. I joke with Jerry Temner, who I founded Kartemquin with, that, now he is in a home for the aged. We're there kind of in our lifespan. But it was really exciting to be part of this thing in Japan. Marcus Gnomes, who put it together, wrote a brilliant essay about kind of direct cinema. And because we're in Chicago and a little bit younger, Leacock Pennybaker, the Maisels, they were my heroes. They were a couple of years older than we were. And we just were always left out of that history. And I think partly just because we were based in Chicago. And finally, we're included, and they actually encouraged me. I actually brought the only camera that we still have, really. You always sell the old camera to get the new camera, but this was a home-built kind of thing. And so we still had it, and I brought it with me to Japan. And the screening was packed. It was really great. And also the panel that I did talking about our role in direct cinema. And then Ian and I, in Tokyo, made another presentation at a university where we talked specifically to Japanese documentary producers, and we talked about documentary ethics. And Ian really talked about what Kartemquin is doing today in our diversity programs, diversity, inclusion, and equity. The only adjustment I felt that instead of saying DEI, let's actually spell it out, what we're doing.
Right on. Those are great words.
Speaking of spelling, why don't you spell out DVID, which was the diversity program that started, 10 or 15 years ago? It was really a progressive thing.
Yeah, you do it, Peter. You're not dyslexic.
DVID, Diverse Voices in Documentary. And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Gordon, it was specifically reaching out to people of color who had projects that they wanted to make, and Kartemquin, having the clout that it did and the knowledge that it did, offered workshops. They chose fellows, 10 to 12 a year, and it was very exciting. And I don't know where it's gone, if it continues today. I want to say one thing, that one of the films that did very well that came out of it was a film called Minding the Gap, about a diverse group of working class and poor skateboarders in Rockford.
Yeah, and the program goes on today. It's still in existence, and we developed it in conjunction with the Community Film Workshop and Margaret Caples, right from the beginning. And this was, yeah, you're right, it's almost 15 years now.
Let's move over to Leipzig, Germany. Is that how you say it?
Leipzig.
The film festival there was what they say is it was originally in the German Democratic Republic, and these films you brought were shown there way back. These films were seen as testimonies to a different America because they took a critical look at their own country, the United States, denounced social ills or societal ills like racism and social inequality, the war in Vietnam, anti-communist hysteria of the McCarthy period. They showed films from the U.S. that documented labor disputes, strikes, alternative histories. Tell us about the current trip you made over there and the showing of the films.
You go, Gordon.
Well, yeah, they invited us. They were going to show these 3 films that had been shown before. The Chicago Maternity Center story about the center that delivered babies at home, and there was an incredible struggle to try and keep it open that was eventually lost. And there were 2 women who were part of that struggle and also students at Columbia College. And when they approached me and Jerry Blumenthal, who were kind of at Kartemquin at that point, in the late 60s, about helping them with that project, that was really the beginning of the collective. We got on board with their film, and one thing I will say about Kartemquin, we change over the years. Our roots are in verite filmmaking and direct cinema, but we pay attention to what's going on in the world and what's going on kind of in terms of where we are in our history. And when we saw that the struggle it started off as a verite film, but it evolved into a very, really a polemical film, trying to explain the industrialization of women's healthcare and childbirth in particular. And so our films don't all look alike. They use different stylistic devices and different ways of telling the story, depending upon what we find in the world around us.
Can I just back up a little bit? The 2 women, Jenny Rohr and Suzanne Davenport, were not just film students. They actually were organizers that recognized the power of film, and they specifically went to take classes at Columbia College to learn how to do it.
Tell us about the 3 films that you took there. I know Trick Bag was one of them. The Maternity Center was another, and you mentioned the other. I didn't get Golub. Tell us about what each of those films are about.
Well, Gordon just ran down Maternity Center, which I felt not only I felt close to because it was one of the collective films that we all worked on, but my own child, the Rising Up Angry Baby, was born with the help of the Chicago Maternity Center with the home birth. But Trick Bag was the second film that we showed, which was part of, I really liked how they knew their stuff. They titled the retrospective Un-American Activities. which draws back to the House Un-American Activities Committee, that were looking at people that we considered patriots who were trying to make the world a better place, and busting them with the McCarthyite stuff. Anyway, I was involved in Rising Up Angry when I came to the Kartemquin Collective, and the film, we'd already talked about making this film, Trick Bag. It was about the organizing that Rising Up Angry was doing, but it wasn't a film about Rising Up Angry. Rising Up Angry was going into neighborhoods of white working class and working poor. Some of them mixed a little, but it was about that. It was about how the neighborhoods in Chicago were changing racially and economically. So I talked with Mike. Michael kind of plays down his role in the film, but as part of Rising Up Angry, we talked about, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if we'd ever make another film. So we talked about what the important issue should be. There were a lot of isms and movements going on, and we were going into neighborhoods talking about the Vietnam War, which was still going on. And these were neighborhoods where the soldiers were coming from and it was difficult and really interesting and challenging to go in to neighborhoods where a brother or an uncle or even a dad was fighting in the war, and we're going in and we're saying we shouldn't be in this war. The other side should win. It was very challenging. But what we came up with was the most challenging of all was the question of race. That's what we focused on. And Trick Bag is about a group of young people from all over the city. We tried to geographically hit all sides of the city, even the southeast side. They talked about how they recognized that racism was a problem. They'd made maybe the first step in the process to understand. And we were influenced, one last thing about it, we were influenced a lot from the vets who were coming back, because what we learned was that the white kids in the service that came from the city, the other white people that they met were farmers and rural people, and they didn't get it. Our kids dressed like the black soldiers. They listened to the same music, and they came back feeling a little differently about it.
What's your take on the role of that movie in today's situation? There's a lot of people I know, like I had earlier, the All Chicago Tenants Alliance people on, and they hadn't seen that movie yet. And I said, well, we'll get you a link or somehow. How can people see that movie, and why is it relevant today?
Well, it's relevant today because the issue of race is still right up there on the top, particularly in Chicago. I didn't have much of a, what do I want to call it? When we worked on this film, I saw it as part of our organizing. I didn't see it as being as broad as it became. It became useful all around the country, people doing that kind of organizing. You can see it. So it's still in a funny way, not a funny way. It's still very relative today. It's a little bit dated in the clothes, the music. It sounds like an oldies station playing. It's a great soundtrack. And we mentioned the war, and we mentioned Jane Fonda and her opposition to the war comes up. But other than that, it's kind of universal, at least in terms of the United States. So it's the name of the film is Trick Bag. And the trick bag was racism, how capitalism keeps people apart by using their differences rather than bringing them together and celebrating those differences. So you can just Google it. You'll find it on the Kartemquin website. It's, I believe it's on Vimeo on demand. And Kartemquin is spelled Kartemquin, a very mysterious word that's really like you'd name a fishing boat if you had three partners: Stanley Carter, Jerry Temener, Gordon Quinn, Kartemquin.
Let me ask the two of you, either one of you, the status of documentary filmmaking today, and I'm thinking more political films, polemical films. The style, the content, is it happening? Is it cooled out? And even if you want to talk a little bit about any Hollywood feature films that have some political and social redeeming content.
You know, I was quoted somewhere recently because someone was asking me about the so-called golden age of documentary, which was about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when a lot of money was coming into the documentary field from platforms like Netflix. And I basically said there never really was a golden age of documentary. It's a bit of a myth. That's not happening now, but there's a lot more people making documentary, and there's a lot more people who see the political potential. Back when I did that first film, Home for Life, I had written my BA paper about cinema verite in a democracy. I felt that film and storytelling, documentary storytelling, had a vital role to play in a democratic society. And we've done many, many films over the years, major television series dealing with immigration, another one dealing with education, all of which you can find on the Kartemquin website. So I think that, you know, there's a lot of people out there who are making all kinds of documentaries to confront social issues today. The thing that I was struck by a bit in Leipzig was we're showing these old films, and they're as relevant today as when we made them. We're still dealing with the same issues around race, around healthcare, around the industrialization of healthcare. And Golub, the other film, is about an artist who did these huge canvases about kind of some of the atrocities that are being committed around the world in our name in places like Central America and, you know, the Vietnam War at that time and that kind of thing. And so, you know, we were drawn to him to tell his story because he was an artist trying to create these powerful canvases that were reflecting back to the country the acts that we were complicit in.
For people who may not know, can I get a definition of cinema verite?
Cinema verite or direct cinema. Cinema verite is the French version. You know, we take it for granted today. It's recording life as it unfolds. You're seeing people talk and interact with each other with sync sound, and all of that came into being in the 1960s. The perversion of it is what they call reality TV, which is you know, nothing about it is real. They're artificial situations filmed as if they were real. But there's a lot of people still working in that style of, you know, you have the camera on your shoulder or you're working with your cell phone and you're just recording what's going on in the world, and then you edit it together in complicated ways to tell a story. And the difference between, you know, if Judy Hoffman was here, she would explain to us that the American version was a little bit more towards the fly in the wall. You just record what's happening without intervening. The French version was more you ask people questions, you intervene, you interact with what's going on in front of the camera. And that's kind of the distinction. We were always, I felt, a hybrid of the two.
Yeah, you know, some of the purists would say this is reality, but the fact is, somebody has to point the camera, somebody has to turn it on, turn it off,
Exactly.
and somebody makes a choice of what's going to be in the movie.
Let me jump in and ask Peter, who I first got to know you, Peter, when I asked you to write a film review for Rising Up Angry, and you did a great job on that great film Bullet. And you've worked as a cameraman on a lot of Hollywood films, and you certainly are a guy who's critical of not only some of the films you've worked on, but the industry, and you have a be critical streak. Can you tell us a little bit about where you think Hollywood films are going these days? Are there any that stand out that have a progressive message? Are there any that are more right wing? Do you have that information in your beautiful brain?
I really love Hollywood films, or I love films in the theater. I love fiction films, let's call them. And I liked the film, I'm going to have trouble with the name. It's Paul Anderson's film about the old revolutionaries.
One Battle.
Yeah. And something that we talked about back in the day, that we were not pro-war, but we felt that the capitalists would not give it up without a fight. And we were not unlike the old guy in the film. And I see with younger directors coming up, there's some really good ideas out there. They're good on race, they're good on gender, they're good on trans issues. Even though they're coming out of that same system, they really recognize some of the ills of it, mainly on the independent side. And although it's changed the industry a lot, the streamers, the Netflix and the Amazons have opened it up a lot, I think.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming on. I'm looking forward to seeing some good films and seeing some more good films made.